The morning light crept through the thin curtains like it was unsure whether it was welcome, brushing softly across the faded sofa, the chipped coffee table, and finally settling on my face as I lay awake long before the alarm rang. I'd learned to wake up early long ago, back when mornings meant lunches to pack, uniforms to iron, and a little girl tugging at my sleeve asking if I'd braided her hair too tight. Now mornings were quiet, almost painfully so, and the silence pressed heavier than any noise ever had. I lay there listening to the hum of the refrigerator in the next room, the steady ticking of the wall clock, and my own breathing, slow and careful, as if even air had become something I needed to ration. I swung my legs off the bed and sat for a moment, letting the dizziness pass. Getting older teaches you patience in small ways. I pulled on my robe, the same one I'd had for years, its pockets sagging slightly from habit, and shuffled toward the kitchen. The linoleum floor was cold under my feet, but I welcomed it. It reminded me I was still here, still standing, still responsible for the choices that had shaped this small, quiet life. I opened the fridge and stared inside, not because I didn't know what was there, but because I needed to see it again to believe it. A half carton of milk, some leftover rice in a plastic container, a single apple slightly bruised on one side. That was it. I closed the door gently, like I didn't want to scare what little food remained, and leaned against the counter. "It's fine," I whispered to myself, the words automatic by now. "You'll manage." I always did. By the time my daughter woke up, I had already made tea and set 2 mismatched mugs on the table. She walked in rubbing her eyes, hair messy, phone already in her hand. She was beautiful in that effortless way youth allows, even when life hadn't quite gone the way she'd planned. For a moment, watching her move around the kitchen, opening cupboards, scrolling through messages, I felt that familiar mix of pride and worry twist inside my chest. "Morning, Mom," she said, distracted but not unkind. "Morning," I replied. Sliding her mug closer, she took a sip and made a face. "You forgot the sugar." I smiled faintly. "I thought you were cutting back." She laughed, a quick sound, and added sugar herself. "I tried that for like 2 days. Didn't work?" She sat down across from me, legs tucked under the chair, tapping away at her phone. I studied her face, the slight dark circles under her eyes, the tension she carried even when she pretended everything was fine. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself for years. "How was work yesterday?" I asked. She shrugged. "Same, hours got cut again." My hand tightened around my mug. "I'm sorry." "It's not your fault," she said quickly, then paused. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something." There it was. That shift in the air. I felt it before she even finished the sentence, like a storm gathering quietly on the horizon. I nodded, bracing myself. "I've been really stressed," she continued. "Everything feels stuck. Like I'm not going anywhere." I didn't interrupt. Mothers learn early that sometimes silence is the best way to listen, and I need a break, she said, finally looking up at me. "Just a few days. A trip, nothing fancy. Just to clear my head." My heart sank, slow and heavy. "A trip?" I repeated. "Yeah," she said, her voice softening. "My friends are going. They've already booked everything." I didn't want to be the only one left behind again. Again, that word lingered between us, sharp and aching. I know money's tight, she added quickly, reaching across the table to touch my hand. But this could really help me, Mom. I just need a little support. Just this once. I looked at our hands, hers warm and full of life, mine thin and veined, spotted with age. I thought of all the times I'd said yes when my heart screamed no. New shoes when she outgrew the old ones. School trips. Emergency bills. Late-night taxi rides. I'd always found a way. How much? I asked quietly. She hesitated, then named the number. It felt like the room tilted slightly, like I'd stood up too fast. That was my pension. Not part of it. All of it. I didn't say anything right away. I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the street where nothing much ever happened. A neighbor's dog barked in the distance. A bus rumbled past. Life going on, indifferent to the weight pressing down on my chest. I get my pension at the end of the week, I said slowly. Her face lit up. I knew you'd understand. Understand. The word landed wrong, but I swallowed the feeling. That's what mothers do. We swallow things until they become part of us. I'll see what I can do, I said. She jumped up and hugged me, quick and tight. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll pay you back. I nodded against her shoulder. Though we both knew that promise had been made before and broken not out of malice, but out of reality. The rest of the day passed in small, ordinary moments. I did laundry, folding clothes that no longer fit me quite right. I swept the floor, wiping away crumbs like they were evidence of something I was trying to hide. Every task felt heavier, as if my body already knew what my mind was still trying to avoid. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my notebook open. Numbers scribbled in the margins: rent, utilities, medication, groceries. I crossed things out, rewrote them, tried different combinations like a puzzle that refused to solve itself. I sighed and closed the notebook. When my pension came, I transferred the money without ceremony. No dramatic pause. No last-minute hesitation. Just a quiet click on the screen, and it was gone, traveling somewhere else. Toward hotel rooms and laughter and photos I would never see. When I told her, she squealed with excitement, already packing. Already halfway out the door emotionally. You're the best, she said, kissing my cheek. I'll make this up to you. I smiled, but something inside me cracked, just a little. The days she was gone stretched long and empty. I moved through the house carefully, conserving energy, conserving food, conserving hope. I skipped meals, telling myself I wasn't hungry. I turned off lights, wrapped myself in blankets, listened to the fridge hum like a reminder of what I'd given away. At night, I lay awake thinking of all the choices that had led me here. The ones I'd made willingly, the ones I hadn't realized were choices at all. I told myself it was temporary, that love meant sacrifice, that this was what mothers did. But deep down, in the quiet moments when the house felt too big and my stomach felt too empty, a different thought began to form, slow and unwelcome. What if love wasn't supposed to hurt this much? By the time my daughter was due to return, something had shifted inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder, clearer. I stood in the kitchen one evening, staring at the nearly empty fridge again, and for the first time, I didn't whisper reassurance to myself. Instead, I said out loud, "This can't go on." The words echoed softly in the room, fragile but real. And as I stood there, alone with that truth, I realized that when she came home, things were going to change, whether either of us was ready or not. The house felt louder after she left, not because of noise, but because every sound had space to echo and remind me that I was alone. The door had barely clicked shut behind her when the quiet rushed in, thick and heavy, like a fog settling into every corner. I stood there for a moment with my hand still hovering near the lock, listening to her footsteps fade down the stairs, the thump of her suitcase wheels bumping against concrete, the distant laugh she shared with someone on the phone. Then even that disappeared, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the slow, deliberate beat of my heart. I turned around and leaned my back against the door, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "It's only a few days," I said aloud, testing the words in the empty room. "You'll be fine." But the apartment didn't answer. It never did. I moved through the living room, straightening pillows that didn't need straightening, picking up a coaster and putting it back down in the exact same spot. The habit of caring for someone else lingered in my hands, restless and searching for purpose. I glanced at the clock on the wall. Too early for lunch. Too late for breakfast. I poured myself another cup of tea anyway, even though I knew it would upset my stomach if I drank it without food. The kitchen felt different without her. Too neat, too still. Her mug sat in the sink, a faint ring of sugar at the bottom. I rinsed it out slowly, watching the water swirl away something sweet and unnecessary. I opened the fridge again, as if it might have changed in the last 10 minutes. It hadn't. I closed it with a sigh and sat down at the table, wrapping both hands around my mug, letting the warmth seep into my palms. This was supposed to be the part where I felt proud, where I told myself I'd done the right thing, where sacrifice felt noble instead of hollow. Instead, all I felt was tired. The first night alone stretched endlessly. I turned on the television for background noise, flipping through channels without really watching anything. Every show seemed to revolve around dinners, vacations, families laughing around tables filled with food. I shut it off and sat in the dark instead, the glow from the streetlight outside casting pale shadows on the walls. When I finally went to bed, sleep came in fragments. I dreamed of receipts piling up on the kitchen counter, of numbers bleeding red ink across my notebook, of my daughter calling my name from another room while I searched endlessly for something I couldn't find. I woke before dawn with my stomach twisting, not from hunger alone, but from worry, the kind that settles deep and refuses to be ignored. The next morning, I went about my routine with exaggerated care. I washed my face, brushed my hair, put on clean clothes as if I were leaving the house. Even though I wasn't, appearances mattered to me, even when no one was around to see them. Especially then, I sat at the table again and opened my notebook, the same one I'd closed in frustration days earlier. I sharpened my pencil slowly, deliberately, and began to write rent, utilities, medication. I paused at groceries, staring at the word like it might offer me a solution if I looked at it long enough. I crossed it out, wrote it again, smaller this time. I could stretch what I had. I always could. Soup instead of meat. Toast instead of full meals. I'd done it before, in quieter ways, when she was younger and needed more than I did. This was no different, I told myself. Still, the knot in my chest tightened. That afternoon, my phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen, and despite everything, my heart lifted. "Mom," she said, her voice bright, alive in a way I hadn't heard in a long time. "You wouldn't believe this place. It's beautiful." "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. Or at least part of me did. "We went to the beach today," she continued. "The water was freezing, but we didn't care. I wish you could see it." I pictured her laughing, hair tangled by the wind, the weight of responsibility momentarily lifted from her shoulders. I wanted that for her. I always had. "Send me a picture," I said. "I will," she replied. "Oh, and don't worry about me." "I'll be fine. You take care of yourself, okay?" I swallowed. I always do. After we hung up, I sat there staring at the phone long after the screen went dark. Take care of yourself. The phrase echoed strangely, like something people said out of habit, without fully considering what it meant. As the days passed, the tension crept in quietly, disguising itself as routine. I skipped breakfast without thinking. I watered down soup to make it last longer. I told myself I wasn't hungry when my stomach growled late at night. I went to the pharmacy and counted coins at the counter, cheeks burning as I apologized for the delay. The young cashier didn't look at me impatiently or kindly. She barely looked at me at all. I wondered when I'd become invisible. One evening, my neighbor knocked on the door. She was holding a plate of food still warm. "I made too much," she said, offering it with a smile that was just a little too knowing. "Thank you," I replied, embarrassed and grateful all at once. "That's very kind." After she left, I stood in the kitchen staring at the plate. The smell made my eyes sting. I ate slowly, deliberately, like it was something sacred. For a moment, I felt human again. Later that night, my daughter sent pictures, sunsets, smiling faces, drinks with little umbrellas. I studied each image carefully, searching for something I couldn't quite name. Proof that it was worth it, maybe. Proof that my sacrifice had meaning. I set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. A memory surfaced, uninvited. My daughter, at 8 years old, standing in the kitchen with her backpack on, asking why I wasn't eating dinner with her. "I already ate," I lied, smiling. She'd accepted it without question, because children trust their parents to tell the truth. I felt something twist painfully inside me. The third night was the hardest. The fridge hummed louder than ever, or maybe I was just listening more closely. I opened it and stood there, barefoot on the cold floor, staring at the near emptiness until my vision blurred. "What are you doing?" I asked myself softly. I closed the door and leaned against it, pressing my forehead to the cool surface. The realization crept in slowly, unwelcome but undeniable. I wasn't just sacrificing comfort. I was sacrificing myself, and worse, I was doing it silently, the way I always had. The next morning, I woke with a headache that pulsed behind my eyes. I moved through the apartment like I was underwater, everything slightly delayed, slightly heavier. I caught my reflection in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked smaller somehow, fragile, This isn't sustainable, I said out loud, gripping the edge of the sink. I considered calling her, telling her I was struggling, asking for help. The thought made my chest tighten with shame. Mothers weren't supposed to need their children like that. Or at least, that's what I'd always believed. Instead, I called the utility company, negotiating extensions, promising payments I wasn't sure I could make. My voice stayed calm, practiced, even as my hands shook. That afternoon, she called again. "Mom, you sound tired," she said after a moment. "Are you okay?" I hesitated. The truth hovered on my tongue, heavy and dangerous. "I'm fine," I replied automatically. There was a pause on the line. "You know you can tell me things, right?" I almost laughed, almost cried. "I know," I said. "Enjoy your trip." After we hung up, something inside me hardened. Not into anger, but into resolve. A quiet understanding began to take shape, one I'd been avoiding for years. Love without boundaries wasn't love. It was erosion. That night, I sat at the kitchen table again, notebook open, pencil poised. But this time, I didn't write numbers. I wrote a single sentence, pressing down hard enough to leave an imprint on the page beneath. "Things have to change." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. Saying them felt dangerous. Believing them felt even more so. But as I sat there, surrounded by the consequences of my choices, I knew something had shifted. When she came home, I wouldn't be silent anymore, and that realization, heavy and terrifying, followed me into sleep, where for the first time in days, I dreamed not of lack, but of standing up and finally being seen. She came back into my life like a gust of warm air through an open door, laughing, talking, filling the room so quickly that for a moment I almost forgot how quiet they'd been without her. I heard her before I saw her. The clatter of keys, the familiar rhythm of her footsteps, the suitcase bumping against the wall. The door flew open, and there she was, cheeks flushed, eyes bright, carrying the scent of sunscreen and airports and freedom. She dropped her bags in the hallway and wrapped her arms around me. Squeezing tight, "I'm home," she said. Like it was a gift she was offering, I hugged her back, breathing her in, feeling the thinness of her frame under my hands, the way she still fit against me like she always had. For a brief second, the months of worry, the nights of hunger, the quiet resentment, all of it softened under the weight of love. "How was it?" I asked, pulling back to look at her face. "Incredible," she said, grinning. "You wouldn't believe how much I needed that." I nodded slowly. "I'm glad." She launched into stories almost immediately, talking as she walked past me into the living room, her words tumbling over each other. Beaches, late nights, new people, inside jokes I didn't understand. I followed her, listening, smiling at the right moments, even laughing when she did. Though each laugh cost me something, she didn't notice how tired I was. Or maybe she did, but didn't know what to do with it. "I brought you something," she said suddenly, rummaging through her bag. She pulled out a small souvenir, something brightly colored and cheerful. "I saw it and thought of you." "It's lovely," I said, holding it carefully, like it might break if I wasn't gentle enough. "Thank you." She beamed, satisfied. And for a moment I wondered if this was how she paid me back now, with trinkets and stories instead of care and consideration. As the evening wore on, reality crept back in quietly. She asked what I'd eaten while she was gone, and I answered vaguely, changing the subject. She talked about needing to do laundry, needing groceries, needing to rest. Need. The word echoed in my head. At one point, she glanced around the kitchen and frowned slightly. "Did you clean out the fridge?" "No," I said, my voice steady. "Why? It just looks emptier than I remember." I shrugged. "I didn't go shopping." "Oh," she said, distracted again, already pulling out her phone. "We ordered takeout that night." She insisted, said it was her treat, and I let her believe that meant more than it did. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, aware of how long it had been since I'd felt full. She talked through most of the meal, scrolling through photos, showing me pictures I'd already seen on her phone, reliving moments that felt like they belonged to another world. Later, when she finally went to bed, the apartment fell quiet again. But it wasn't the same kind of quiet as before. This silence was heavier, filled with things unsaid, with truths pressing against the walls. The next few days unfolded in a rhythm that felt familiar and wrong all at once. She slept late, complained about jet lag, met friends for coffee. I moved around her, cooking small meals, cleaning up after her, slipping back into the role I knew too well. Every time she laughed, every time she talked about her trip, something inside me tightened. I watched her spend money without thinking, on coffee, on clothes, on little indulgences that added up quickly. Each time my chest ached, but I said nothing. I told myself this was the adjustment period, that things would settle. They didn't. Single quotes T. One afternoon, as I was folding laundry, she walked into the room and sat on the bed, watching me. "Mom," she said casually, "do you think you could help me out again this month?" My hands stilled, a shirt half folded in my lap. "With what?" I asked. "Just until I get back on my feet," she said. "Work's still slow and rent's coming up. I'll figure something out soon, I promise." The room felt suddenly smaller, the air thicker. "I gave you my pension," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, her tone gentle but impatient. "And I'm grateful. I really am. But that was for the trip. This is different." Different. The word landed hard. "I don't have much left," I said, meeting her eyes. She sighed. "Mom, you're retired. You don't have expenses like I do." The word stung more than I expected. I set the shirt down carefully, afraid my hands might shake. "I have rent," I said. "Bills, medication, food." She waved a hand dismissively. "I didn't mean it like that. I just mean you're more stable than I am." Stable. I almost laughed. "I can't," I said finally. "Not right now." She stared at me, surprised. "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean I don't have it," I replied, my voice steady but strained. Her expression shifted, irritation flickering across her face. "So what am I supposed to do?" I felt something rise up inside me then, something I'd been holding back for years. "I don't know," I said softly. "What was I supposed to do when you were gone?" She blinked. "What are you talking about?" I took a breath. "I didn't eat properly. I worried every night. I counted coins. I asked for extensions. I went days without groceries. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed again. You should have told me. I tried, I said. In my own way. She stood up abruptly. That's not fair. You always do this, act like a martyr instead of just speaking up. The word hit me like a slap. I wasn't acting, I said, my voice trembling despite my efforts. I was surviving. We stood there, facing each other, the space between us charged with years of unspoken tension. You made me feel guilty for going on that trip, she said, crossing her arms. Like I don't deserve anything good. That's not what I said, I replied. It's what you meant. She insisted. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I wanted you to go, I said. I just didn't want to disappear in the process. She looked away, jaw clenched. I didn't ask you to sacrifice like that. No, I said. You didn't have to. The silence that followed was heavy, uncomfortable. Finally, she grabbed her jacket. I need some air, she muttered, heading for the door. When it closed behind her, I sank onto the bed, my legs giving out beneath me. My heart pounded, my thoughts racing. I'd finally said something. And now there was no taking it back. She didn't come home until late that night. When she did, she went straight to her room, the door clicking shut with a finality that made my chest ache. Over the next few days, the tension lingered, thick and unresolved. We spoke, but only about practical things. Who was cooking? Who was buying groceries? What time someone would be home? The warmth between us had cooled, replaced by something brittle and fragile. I caught her watching me sometimes, her expression unreadable. I wondered what she saw. A burden? A safety net? A mother who'd finally cracked? One evening, I stood in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, when she walked in and opened the fridge. She stared inside longer than necessary. Why didn't you tell me it was this bad? She asked quietly. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to make you feel responsible. She closed the fridge slowly. I am responsible. I finally faced her. I don't want your guilt, I said. I want respect. Her eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. I don't know how to do that, she admitted. Neither did I. That night, as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, a deep realization settled over me, heavier than anything I'd felt before. Loving her didn't mean losing myself. And if our relationship was going to survive, something fundamental had to change. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider a future where my needs mattered too, and that thought, terrifying and liberating all at once, pushed the story forward into territory neither of us could ignore anymore. The scream came from the kitchen, sharp and sudden, slicing through the apartment like glass shattering in slow motion. For a heartbeat, I didn't move. I stood frozen in the hallway, one hand gripping the back of a chair, my body already knowing what my mind was trying to deny. That sound wasn't fear of a spider or surprise at a broken plate. It was something deeper. Something cracked open. Mom? Her voice followed, thinner now, unsteady. Mom, can you come here? Each step toward the kitchen felt heavier than the last, like I was walking into a truth that could no longer be rearranged or softened. The tiles were cold under my feet. The air smelled faintly of detergent and the cheap soap I'd bought because it was on sale. Ordinary things. The kind of things that hide extraordinary pain. She was standing in front of the open refrigerator, one hand covering her mouth, the other still clutching the door handle like she needed it to stay upright. The light inside the fridge spilled out onto her face, pale and unforgiving. "Why is it empty?" she whispered. I followed her gaze. The same shelves I'd stared at for weeks. The same near-nothingness. Milk gone now. Only a jar of mustard, a wilted bunch of greens I hadn't yet thrown away, and a small container of leftover soup I'd been saving for later. For when I really needed it, I didn't answer right away. I moved past her and closed the fridge gently, not because it changed anything, but because the quiet click felt kinder than leaving it open like an accusation. "I didn't go shopping," I said. She turned to me slowly, disbelief written across her face. "Mom, this isn't didn't go shopping. This is nothing." I leaned against the counter, suddenly exhausted. "It was enough. For who?" she asked, her voice rising. "For you?" I looked at her then, really looked. The color in her cheeks from the trip had faded. Her eyes were searching my face, frantic now, like she was trying to rewind time and failing. "How long?" she asked. "How long has it been like this?" I hesitated. That pause said more than any number ever could. Her eyes filled instantly. "Oh my God." "It's fine," I said quickly, the words automatic, reflexive. I managed. Her mouth opened, then closed. She dragged a hand through her hair and turned away, pacing the small kitchen like a trapped animal. "You let me take your pension," she said, her voice shaking. "You let me go on that trip knowing this would happen." I flinched at the word let, but I didn't correct her. "I didn't think it would be this bad," she continued. "You should have stopped me." I straightened. "You're not a child." "That's not the point," she snapped, then stopped short, pressing her palms to the counter. She took a breath, then another. "Why didn't you tell me?" I felt something shift inside me then. A door opening inward instead of outward. "Because every time I need something," I said slowly, "I tell myself it's easier not to." She turned back to me, eyes wide. "That's not fair. You're my mother." "Yes," I said quietly. And somewhere along the way, I forgot I was also a person. The words hung between us, heavy and undeniable. She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. "I thought you were okay. You always act okay." "I learned that a long time ago," I replied. "It keeps things moving." There was a long silence, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. Each second felt louder than the last. "I bought shoes," she said suddenly, her voice muffled. 3 pairs. I didn't need them. I said nothing. "And dinners," she continued. "And drinks." I didn't even think about it. I just spent. I watched her shoulders shake. This wasn't the confrontation I'd imagined. There was no yelling now, just the slow, painful unraveling of illusions. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," I said. "I'm saying it because it already has." She looked up at me then, eyes red, mascara smudged. "Do you hate me?" The question cut deep. "No," I said immediately. "I love you." "That's the problem." She laughed weakly through her tears. "That's not how love is supposed to sound." "No," I agreed. "It's not." She stood and walked toward me, stopping just inches away. "I didn't mean to take advantage of you." "I know," I said. But intention doesn't erase impact. She nodded slowly, like each word was landing one by one, bruising but necessary. That night, neither of us slept much. We moved around each other carefully, like we were both afraid of breaking something fragile. She insisted on ordering groceries immediately, filling the fridge until it hummed with abundance. Watching her do it made my chest ache in a way I couldn't explain. "This doesn't fix it," I said gently. "I know," she replied. "But it's a start." The next morning, she made breakfast. Eggs, toast, fruit. A spread that felt almost extravagant. She set the plate in front of me and watched until I took a bite. "Eat," she said softly. I did. As the days passed, the conversation continued in pieces. Not all at once. In moments between tasks. Over coffee. Late at night. She asked questions she'd never asked before. About my bills. About my medication. About how long I'd been feeling this tired, and I answered. Not all of it, but more than I ever had. One evening, as we sat at the table going over numbers together, she looked up suddenly. "I thought being independent meant not needing anyone," she said. "I didn't realize it could also mean pretending you don't." I closed the notebook. I thought being a good mother meant never asking for anything back. We sat with that for a while. The real turning point came quietly, without drama. She was on the phone with a friend one afternoon, laughing, when she stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "I can't go," she said into the phone. "I need to be home." After she hung up, she shrugged, embarrassed. It felt wrong to leave again. I nodded, unsure what to say. That night, as I lay in bed, listening to the fridge hum, not empty anymore, but not quite full either, I realized something that changed everything. The scream in the kitchen hadn't just been hers. It had been mine too. It was the sound of years of silence finally breaking open, of a truth that could no longer be ignored. And as painful as it was, it had given us something we'd never had before, a chance to start again, not as martyr and child, but as two women learning, too late and just in time, how to see each other clearly. The moment everything finally broke wasn't loud, it was quiet, heavy, and suffocating. Like the air just before a storm decides whether it will destroy or cleanse. It happened on an ordinary afternoon, the kind that usually slips by unnoticed. The sunlight was dull, filtered through clouds that couldn't decide what they wanted to be. I was at the kitchen sink, washing dishes that had already been washed once before, my hands moving out of habit more than necessity. The water ran too hot, but I didn't adjust it. I welcomed the sting. It reminded me I was still capable of feeling something sharp. Behind me. I heard her pacing. She'd been doing that a lot lately, walking back and forth between rooms. Restless, unsettled, like she was trapped inside thoughts she didn't know how to say out loud. I could feel her presence without turning around. Mothers develop that sense early, and it never really goes away. "Mom," she said finally. I waited. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I needed a second to prepare myself. "Yes?" I replied, shutting off the tap and drying my hands slowly. She was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes rimmed red, not crying, not angry, but caught somewhere painful in between. "I've been thinking," she said. That phrase used to make my heart swell with pride when she was younger. Now it made my stomach tighten. "So have I said. She swallowed. "I don't know how we got here." The words hung between us, fragile and loaded. "I do," I replied quietly. She straightened. "Then tell me." I gestured toward the table, and we sat across from each other like strangers negotiating something neither of us wanted to lose. The space between us felt wider than the table itself. "I spent years teaching you to be strong," I said slowly. "To take care of yourself. To never settle for less than you deserved." She nodded. "You did. But somewhere along the way," I continued, "I taught you that my needs came last, that they barely existed at all." Her eyes dropped to the table. "I never meant for that to happen." "I know," I said. "That's what makes it hurt more." Her fingers twisted together, knuckles whitening. "I feel like everything I do now is wrong. If I stay, I'm guilty. If I leave, I'm selfish." I leaned back in my chair, exhaustion settling deep into my bones. "Welcome to how I've felt for most of my life." She looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "No," I agreed. "But it's true." Silence stretched between us again, thick and uncomfortable. I could hear the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking, the faint sound of traffic outside. Life continuing, indifferent to our reckoning. "I didn't ask you to give up your pension," she said suddenly, her voice cracking. "I asked for help, and I gave it," I replied. "Without limits, without conditions, without honesty." She pressed her lips together, fighting tears. "I hate that I didn't notice. I hate that I didn't make you notice," I said. The words surprised me as much as they did her. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," I said carefully, "that I played a part in this. I made myself invisible because it felt safer than risking your disappointment." Her shoulders slumped. "I never wanted you to disappear." "But you didn't notice when I did," I replied. Not accusing, just stating the truth. That was when the dam finally broke. She stood abruptly, pushing the chair back with a harsh scrape against the floor. "Do you have any idea how heavy this feels?" she cried. "Knowing I was out there laughing while you were starving?" "I wasn't starving," I said automatically. She slammed her hand on the table. "Don't do that. Don't minimize it." I flinched, then straightened. "You're right," I said. "I was hungry. I was scared. And I was alone." Her breath hitched. "I don't know how to fix this." The room felt charged now, electric with everything we'd been holding back. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "You can't fix the past," I said. "But you can stop repeating it." She shook her head, tears spilling freely now. "I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be someone who takes and takes." "Then stop," I said gently. She stared at me, stunned. "It's not that simple." "It never is," I replied. "But it is that necessary." She sank back into her chair, covering her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook as sobs tore through her, raw and unfiltered. I watched her cry, my own tears burning behind my eyes, and felt something inside me shift again, not soften, but clarify. "I was proud of you," I said quietly. So proud that I let pride replace truth. She looked up, mascara streaked, eyes red and searching. "Are you saying you don't want me here anymore?" The question cut deeper than she knew. "I'm saying," I replied, choosing each word carefully, "that I don't want to lose myself to keep you comfortable, She stared at me, realization dawning slowly, painfully. You want me to move out, she whispered. The room seemed to hold its breath. I think, I said, my voice trembling despite my effort, that we both need space to learn who we are without hurting each other. She stood again, pacing, running her hands through her hair. So that's it? After everything, you're pushing me away? No, I said firmly. I'm setting boundaries. She laughed bitterly. Feels the same. It's not, I insisted. Pushing you away would be silence. This is honesty. She stopped pacing and turned to me, eyes blazing. You're choosing yourself over me. The words landed hard, but instead of breaking me, they steadied me. Yes, I said. For the first time in my life, I am. The silence that followed was deafening. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Really seeing me, not just as her mother, not just as a safety net, but as a woman who had reached her limit. I don't know how to be okay with that, she admitted. I didn't either, I said softly. Not at first. We didn't speak for a long time after that. The conversation had taken everything out of us. Later, she retreated to her room, closing the door gently this time. I remained at the table, staring at the faint scratches on its surface, each one a quiet witness to years of shared meals, shared silence, shared survival. That night, I didn't cook. I made myself a simple sandwich and ate it alone, slowly, deliberately. It wasn't much, but it was enough, and for once that felt like a choice, not a consequence. As I washed my plate, I caught my reflection in the dark window. My face looked older than I remembered, but also clearer, sharper, like someone who had finally stepped into the light after standing too long in the shadows. I realized then that love didn't have to mean erasing myself. That sacrifice without limits wasn't noble, it was destructive. And that choosing myself didn't mean I loved her any less. It meant I loved us enough to stop lying. That realization settled deep inside me, heavy and unmovable, and I knew there was no going back. Whatever came next, distance, healing, pain, growth, it would be built on truth. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't afraid of that. I wasn't afraid of that. The morning after everything changed arrived quietly, like it didn't know whether it was welcome anymore. I woke before the alarm, staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of the apartment settling, the pipes knocking gently, the refrigerator humming, the distant traffic outside. For the first time in weeks, my stomach didn't ache from hunger or fear. Instead, there was a different heaviness inside me, unfamiliar but steady. Resolve has weight. I was learning that. I got out of bed slowly and dressed without turning on the light. In the mirror, my face looked the same and different all at once. The lines were still there, the tired eyes, but something else had joined them. Clarity. I didn't look smaller anymore. In the kitchen, I put water on for coffee. Real coffee. I'd been stretching the jar for weeks, using less each morning, pretending I didn't notice the thinning taste. Today, I didn't measure. I scooped enough. The smell filled the room, rich and grounding, and I closed my eyes for a moment, letting it anchor me. She came out of her room while the kettle was still heating. Her hair was messy, her face bare, eyes swollen from crying. She stopped short when she saw me, like she wasn't sure which version of me she'd find standing there, mourning, she said carefully. Morning, I replied. We stood there, two women sharing the same space, no longer pretending nothing had happened. It was awkward, but it was honest. She reached for a mug, hesitated, then chose the one with the chipped rim, the one she always used growing up. I noticed. I always noticed. I didn't sleep, she said quietly. Neither did I. She nodded, staring into her cup as I poured the coffee. I keep replaying everything in my head. So do I said, handing her the mug. That's how change starts. She gave a small, tired smile. You sound very sure of yourself. I'm not, I admitted. I'm just done pretending. We sat at the table, the same table that had witnessed our arguments, our silences, our slow unraveling. Sunlight filtered through the window, catching dust in the air. Ordinary, beautiful, fragile. I've been looking at apartments, she said suddenly. My heart skipped, then steadied. Have you? Yeah, she continued, rushing now. Nothing fancy. Just something small. I can afford it if I cut back on everything else. I studied her face, the seriousness there, the fear underneath it. You don't have to rush. I know, she said, but I think I should. I nodded slowly. If that's what you want. She winced. That's the problem. I don't know what I want. I just know I don't want to hurt you again. I took a breath. Then listen to me carefully. She looked up. Moving out won't fix everything, I said. And staying won't break everything. What matters is what we do next. She swallowed. I don't want to lose you. You won't, I said firmly. But our relationship can't survive if it only works when I disappear. Tears filled her eyes again, but she didn't look away this time. I'm scared. So am I replied. But fear doesn't mean stop. It means pay attention. The days that followed were slow, deliberate, almost tender. We talked more than we had in years, but not all at once. Conversations came in pieces, between chores, during quiet evenings, while folding laundry together like we used to when she was small. She asked about my life before her, about my dreams, the ones I'd shelved quietly. No one had ever asked me those questions before. Not really. I wanted to travel, I told her one night, surprising myself. Not far, just see things. She smiled sadly. I never knew that. I didn't talk about it, I said. Dreams feel dangerous when you don't think you're allowed to have them. She helped me reorganize my finances, not with pity, but with respect. We sat side by side, going through bills, budgets, possibilities. She didn't rush this time. She listened. One afternoon, she placed an envelope on the table between us. What's this? I asked. She took a breath. It's a repayment plan. I can't give you everything back at once, but I want to return what I took. Not just the money, the trust. I stared at the envelope, my throat tight. You don't owe me your life. I owe you accountability, she said. And I need that too. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When I finally did, my voice was steady. Then we'll do it together. As moving day approached, the apartment filled with boxes. Each one felt like a marker of transition. Not loss, change. The night before she left, we sat on the floor eating takeout from cartons, the table already cleared. She laughed at something on her phone, then grew quiet. I wish it didn't take something so extreme for me to see you, she said. I considered that. Sometimes pain is the only thing loud enough to wake us up. She leaned her head on my shoulder, tentative, like she wasn't sure she still could. I wrapped an arm around her without hesitation. You're not a bad person, I said softly. You were just unexamined. She laughed weakly. That might be worse. No, I said. It means you can grow. The next morning, I watched her load the last box into a friend's car. She hugged me tightly before getting in, holding on longer than usual. I'll call you tonight, she said. I know, I replied. When the car pulled away, I stood there until it disappeared from view. The apartment behind me was quiet again, but this time it felt different. Not empty, open. Inside, I walked to the kitchen and opened the fridge. It wasn't overflowing, but it was balanced. Enough. That word again. Enough. Chosen this time. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the table, alone but not abandoned. For the first time, the silence didn't accuse me. It held me. I realized then that the scream in the kitchen, the confrontation, the painful honesty, it hadn't destroyed us. It had saved us. Not by restoring what we were, but by allowing us to become something healthier, something truer. Love with boundaries. Care without erasure. Sacrifice with consent. I lifted my mug in a quiet toast. To no one in particular. To myself. And as the light shifted across the room, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was the first chapter where I finally stood in my own life, fully present, fully seen and unwilling, at last to disappear ever again.